This is NICU Babies Parent Support with Catherine Whitaker, a podcast from Hand to Hold, a national nonprofit that provides free personalized support, resources, and community before, during, and after a NICU stay. My conversations here will focus on education and personal stories with medical and hospital professionals, counselors, therapists, and NICU moms and dads from across the country. Whether you're preparing for a NICU stay, you're currently there, or you're months and years past your stay, you belong here. The NICU is hard. We're here to help. I'm your host, Catherine Whitaker, the mom of 6 children, including my very own NICU baby, and I'm so honored you're here. Howdy, everybody. Welcome back to the podcast. I'm so happy that you're here. So it's a new month. It is October, in case you needed someone to remind you what month it was. But it's also an important month for the podcast in the sense that we are talking about a topic that's really important to me. It's Down Syndrome Awareness Month. Now, I know that not every Down syndrome baby spends time in the NICU, but I do believe that there are a lot of shared experiences in the sense that sometimes you walk into something new and you have no idea what's going to be on the other side. And I think every NICU mom, dad, and caregiver can certainly appreciate that perspective. So while my guest today did not spend time in the NICU, she spent plenty of time in the PICU with her son, Beckett. But I think that her perspective on what that diagnosis did to their family, how it influenced them, but most importantly, I hope that you walk away from today's podcast with a lot of encouragement, hope, and love, because that's really what I strive to do on all of our podcasts. I know that we have great guests who have amazing wisdom and life experience and things that we can learn from. But I don't think I would be doing my job well if you didn't hit the end button after you listen to the podcast and walk away with a lot of hope. And that's my dream, that you're going to walk away from this one today with a lot of hope. I'm interviewing a friend of mine, Stephanie Weinert, and I think you're going to really, really love this interview. Stephanie Weinert is a wife, a mother, a writer, and a media personality. She served as a radio host before becoming a stay-at-home mom. Stephanie has spoken nationally and internationally on topics related to faith, family life, homeschooling, motherhood, and the suffering path to salvation. She and her husband, Peter, share openly about their youngest son, Beckett, who was born in 2019 with a surprise diagnosis of Down syndrome and a serious heart defect. Beckett's short life of 18 months changed the Weinert family forever. Caring for a special needs child and walking through grief and child loss has helped Stephanie see motherhood through a new lens. And with that, let's chat. Stephanie, thank you so much for being here. I am really honored that you are choosing to spend part of your day sharing a little bit of your story with us.
Well, thank you. It's truly an honor to be here and so good to see your face. I'd come here just to see your face and say hey to you. I miss you.
I'll take that. Well, because October is Down Syndrome Awareness Month, I thought we should just start at the very beginning. Tell us how you found out about Beckett's diagnosis of Down syndrome.
Sure. So Beckett was my 5th pregnancy. I'd had some miscarriages along the way, but my 5th birth, and I was almost 40. I was 38, turning 39, like at the month he was born. So at that stage, they consider you geriatric. So I had like all like the 40 ultrasounds, like all the things that you can imagine, all the tests, and nothing was ever picked up of concern with Beckett's anatomy, with like anything, like nothing was ever found during the pregnancy, even though I had a lot of that extra attention and extra care. So I went in for my 38-week checkup and they did a spontaneous, let's do an ultrasound because you're here. And they found out that I had like no amniotic fluid, like just very, very little. And so the doctor came into the room and said, honey, you're going to meet your baby today. And so it was a big scramble. I had 4 other little kids. I called my husband. I was like, you're done with work for the day. Meet me at the hospital kind of thing. So Beckett came into the world with a lot of mayhem through my first C-section. And it was a little bit traumatic being that it was kind of an emergency situation. And I think because it was an emergency C-section and everyone was concerned about my health, that nobody picked up that anything was wrong with Beckett. So he had like at birth, he had a clean, like your perfect little baby, sent me off to recovery. And again, everyone focusing on my health and recovery from the C-section. So I had 2 wonderful days with Beckett without anyone telling me that anything was wrong with him. And I'm so grateful for that gift because I got to bond with him. My husband got to bond with him without any fears, any anxiety, just him and us. And on our discharge day, when the pediatrician on call came in to discharge us, she spent a lot of time with him. And my husband had just walked in with coffee. He and I were talking. She's over here, examining my baby. And she turned around and said, I hear something that sounds a little irregular in his heart. I'm going to go get one of my colleagues. We're going to come in. We're going to examine him a little bit more. And she brought another doctor in, and the two of them kind of like took his little crib over to the corner, spent a lot of time with him. And she turned around and she said, I'm fairly certain your son has something wrong with his heart. We're going to have to take him for an echocardiogram and we're going to have to run tests to see. But I feel like I'm pretty sure I hear something wrong with his heart. And I also think your son has something called Down syndrome. Have you ever heard of that? And I just looked back at her and I was like, yes, I know what that is. Like, of course I know what that is. What makes you think he has it? And she started to show me different signs that he had low muscle tone, that he had a little bit of extra skin on the back of his neck. There were certain things about Beckett that didn't fit. Like, there's a checklist of things that a doctor will look at a newborn, because sometimes it's really hard to tell. He didn't have, we have 2 lines on our hand. Most Down syndrome babies only have 1, but Beckett had 2. So I was like, well, maybe she's wrong, like in my head, doctors can make mistakes. So that day, we were not discharged. It started a day of many tests, many doctors and specialists coming in to tell us all the would-be's, could-be's, should-be's of what our child might have and probably did have. The heart surgeon came in and he drew on a piece of printer paper Beckett's heart and started showing us how significant the struggles were, the differences were in Beckett's heart, and how to live he would have to have at least 1 major open heart surgery around the time he was 4, probably another one at 18, and that he would always be a heart patient. And then the heart surgeon felt very confident that Beckett had Down syndrome, just from what he knows from working with a lot of Down syndrome children, who also, a large percentage of Down syndrome babies do also have a heart difference of some kind. And so then, everyone came in who was going to run the test to see if Beckett actually had Down syndrome, and they can give you 48 hours later, like the initial results. And then it can take up to a week or 10 days to get like the full picture of what Beckett's chromosomes look like. So we had the initial test come back and say, yes, we think he does. But I think my husband and I still went home with like this, well, God is a God of miracles and doctors can be wrong. And maybe there's this chance that he doesn't have Down syndrome. So it was really hard. I would say one of our lowest moments of sorrow was that phone call when we did get the call that Beckett's full tests had come back and he very much did have an extra chromosome. So we found out after birth. That's not everyone's stories. A lot of people find out at 20 weeks expecting, or in one of the ultrasounds between 20 weeks and birth. But we didn't. Our story was a surprise diagnosis on our way home from the hospital. And I believe that's how God wanted it to be for our family. I think that God knows what we can handle and God knows what we need. And I feel like it was the way it was meant to be, that we would find out about our Beckett.
Well, I mean, I'm listening to you share. Thank you for sharing his entrance into the world. This honeymoon phase that you had, and then the reality, I think many NICU moms can at least identify with. Perhaps there was a moment that we had a lot of hope, and then reality comes in, and then all the specialists and all the doctors, and then you start to feel like, oh my gosh, what have we gotten ourselves into? And I'm sure that there's some people listening to that who can feel that that same feeling. Steph, so as you're coming home, you're bringing Beckett home, like what are some things that you had to relearn as a mom? I mean, I know you had other children at home, and sometimes we feel like when we have a number of children, like we're on it, like we've done this before. It's like locked and loaded. You just go to the next thing. So what did you have to relearn with Beckett?
Oh, so many
I know that's
things.
a loaded question.
So many things. I would say coming home when we were discharged, when we actually went home from the hospital and we'd had a little bit of time for it to start sinking in. Because in those first moments, like you experience everything in your body almost before your brain can take in your new reality. Your body, like you feel the adrenaline, you feel the fear, you feel the dread, like all like I remember feeling like the sweats, and then had the chills. Like I had all these stress responses in my body. And we had that little bit of time for that to settle down or that to sink in that this is reality. Because I did have thoughts, Catherine, like my entire life is over. I remember like having in my brain these like scenes flash through, like I will never go on a vacation ever again. Like when I'm retired, like I thought that I would like travel the world with my husband. I'm going to be with an adult child my entire life. Like I just had all these fears, like everything's over, everything has changed. And everything did change. Like when you become a special needs parent or a NICU mom or a PICU mom, everything does change. Your entire schedule, your rhythm of life, your sleep, your relationship with your spouse, your relationship with your everything, just like it's like a laundry basket. You just dump a little laundry on the couch and it's just a mountain of mess. Like the laundry is all still there. It's just all so jumbled that you like cannot make sense of it.
Yeah.
And so all of those things did happen. And I've always tried to be so honest about the fact, like everything was a mess. Everything was like in upheaval. And we had to find a new way. But I would say the things that changed and that we learned is that asking for help, while humbling at first, it's necessary, but it is so beautiful. It's beautiful to be the person receiving, but also the person giving. We had so many people thank us for allowing them to come in and help, to bring the meals, to clean my bathroom. I mean, I remember one friend, she came over with shredded cheese and tortillas to make my kids lunch and a thing of Clorox because she asked me what I needed. And I was like, there's mold growing in every shower in my house. Like everything's just like falling apart. And she just came over with the Clorox. And like, what a gift to have someone who will love on you that way. And that I had to learn how to receive that because that is not how I naturally receive love. It panicked me at first, but to learn to receive love. And I would say the other thing is to learn to share your child. That, we have these fears about Down syndromes or these misconceptions about what Down syndrome is like or what a person with Down syndrome is going to be like, or we're scared about that we won't know what to say or how to react or how to encounter that person or those parents. And to learn to just dive into that messy, to be like, okay, you don't know what to say to me or about this baby. And I don't know how to help you through it, but we're going to connect right here. And we're going to show up at your house or we're going to invite you into ours anyway to meet this child and to see us in this messy process of learning to be a special needs family. And I would say that messy middle of nobody knowing exactly what to do or nobody knowing exactly what to say or how to help, and me either, my husband either, my kids either, that we all learned and grew so much as people. Like we really did. We became more compassionate. We became more in tune with each other's needs. We saw the world differently. And we learned to practice joy, even in hard things. And that's a gift that once you learn, like you can't unlearn that.
Right.
And you can take it in every area of your life. So yeah, it was good and a mess and as hard as I expected it to be and all my like fears, but it was also so beautiful. And we all grew into people that I'm really proud of.
Well, I mean, I think that sometimes we think of the future with our current selves, meaning that we don't give ourselves the gift of knowing that we're going to grow and change and get to the next place, that we see this destination down the road with our today eyes and forgetting what tomorrow's heart may bring. So I think that that's a good perspective and that we do grow and change if we're open to receiving that and how other people loving our families can change us. So I know, Steph, that Beckett had some challenges. Like what were a couple of his biggest challenges that y'all were dealing with as a family?
Yeah. So I feel like I should say first that when a baby is born with Down syndrome, Down syndrome could be the only difficulty that baby, child, and adult will face. And that comes with, certain developmental delays and things that are going to need a lot of help and a lot of therapies. And then there's a wide spectrum of other issues or differences that can also come with Down syndrome. So my Beckett was a very complicated case. He had a significant heart defect and he also had lung disease, and they did not play nice with each other. And so even things like Beckett's motor skills, which were of course delayed because of Down syndrome, because he was a heart baby, it was extra hard for him to have the energy to learn to sit up or like to put his hands and knees on the floor to start that crawling process. That was like 4 to 40 times harder for Beckett because his heart had to work so much harder and his lungs had to work so much harder. So he came with a lot of needs for help. And thankfully, we live in a world with so much advanced technology, Catherine, and I know that you know this, like so many beautiful human beings who invest their lives and their passion and their skills and their knowledge into learning how to help these children and these babies. You and I could sit here all day and talk about the doctor or the nurse or the therapist that just like changes your life. And all of our therapists, Beckett's first year, were at home therapy because it was 2020. It was the COVID year. So we were going
anywhere
oh my gosh, yeah. And seeing anyone. And so they would all come to our home. And because everyone was masked, he was afraid of them. Like we had all kinds of like extra difficulties for that year and that time. But people were amazing working with him, and everything that we needed, there was a doctor, a nurse, a therapist to work with us and to help us. And so again, it's just allowing yourself to be loved on, allowing yourself to learn, because with any of those things, it's a partnership between the parent and the therapist or whoever's working with your child. So we had a lot of things to learn of like how to care for him and how to work with him. And it does become a second full-time job. So you learn what else to let go of, and your family learns how to come together. Like this is a team effort. This is not just mom or dad or, an older sibling. This is everybody coming together to make this work and to fight together for someone we love.
This podcast is produced by Hand to Hold, a national nonprofit, but we're more than simply a podcast. Be sure to download our app, join one of our support groups, or find one-to-one support, enjoy counseling, find loss and bereavement support, participate in a peer-to-peer mentor program, or check out our news, articles, and family stories at handtohold.org. All of that is at no cost to you. Hand to Hold's mission is to provide personalized support before, during, and after a NICU stay to help ensure that all NICU families thrive. Well, I know you were sharing about the challenges part, and I think sometimes that's what we fear, right? Like, so we fear either challenges that are known or unknown and how we're going to adapt to that. I'm curious though, Steph, like what things did you fear that never came to fruition, or that you feared that turned out drastically differently than what you thought?
So this is the question that I feel like when I do interviews, a lot of hosts want me to come and relieve everyone's fears. And I know you want me to speak the truth, Catherine. So I'm going to speak the truth. There were most of the fears in my heart about how hard it was going to be, how much my heart would have to suffer watching my child suffer, how much it was going to affect our family culture and things that we love to do together, or just like who we were as a family. It was just as bad as my fears. But what I didn't know was how much love was going to come into the mix that was going to make it possible to make those sacrifices. It's like, first time mom, and you really are afraid of labor. Like, at least I was afraid
I was terrified.
Could I actually do this? Like, cause you hear all the stories and how could I actually do this?
No, I called my college roommate and I was like, I need a play-by-play, and because I know that you will tell me the reality. Yeah, so I think we can all appreciate like you're terrified.
It's actually very
hard.
But
yes, it is.
That moment they put that baby on your chest and you were flooded with a love you did not know existed, and that you could read book after book about, but you just don't get it until that moment where you just know, and it changes your life. That's what happens to you when a special needs baby comes into your family. Like yes, all the things you feared are now coming true. This is going to be really hard. You are going to suffer. You're going to sacrifice. This is going to be really hard. This is going to be very demanding for you as a person. It's going to take all that you are to care for this child. But what you can't put in a book or a soundbite on a podcast is what love can do. And love transforms a family. It transforms a heart. It has changed my heart so much. And I have done things and I've walked through things and I have become a person that I never thought I could be because I allowed myself to love in a sacrificial way. I allowed myself to be loved on in ways that I would have put up walls and said, I don't need your help, or I don't I don't need you in my life. I'm doing just fine on my own. Like to break down those walls and let love flood, it makes it all possible. And if you want to learn what love is, you just go spend time in a NICU or a PICU. Love is there. Love is what's healing. Love is what gets you through the day and the night and through, the meeting with the doctors the next morning. It's love, and it does transform, and it holds you up, and it changes your life into a person that, not only helps your child live, but it helps you live to the fullest of your potential as a woman, as a parent. I wouldn't trade that for anything.
Well, I know that there have been a lot of people who've been blessed by the fact that you sort of carried Beckett's story, both intentionally, publicly, but also privately within your family. Steph, and part of that was sharing, the reality of some of his struggles. And when we were talking about fears, I'm sure one of your greatest fears came true. And I think that it's important for people to understand sort of the end of Beckett's life here on earth, but sort of how that transformed your family. So maybe can you share with people, Steph, a little bit of maybe that journey of telling him goodbye here on earth, and then what that now looks like in your family? I know that as we enter the holidays and sometimes big anniversaries, grief plays a role in that, and sort of how do you confront that or work through that? So I think I'm curious to know a little bit of your story there.
So Beckett lived 18 months and 16 days. He went home to heaven May of 2021 after 2 months in the PICU fighting hard for his life. And he had had a surgery that didn't go well in March of 21. And he just could not recover from that surgery. His lungs just became weaker and weaker. He became too weak to do the heart surgery that would have saved his life. And so we fought so hard, Catherine. It's, NICU moms know what this is like, but it's just an every day and every night was a constant fighting for his life for especially those last two months, 10 weeks. And then he went home, and it was as bad as all my fears of losing a child. Like, it was bad. It was worse. There's grace available for whatever you walk through. There is love to flood wherever your circumstances are, but you're not going to get it in advance. So when I worried, when Beckett was 6 weeks old about what would happen with his life and, feared death and all of these things, I didn't have what was needed to walk through the moments of death then. But when those moments came, I did. I had the people around me. I had God's grace flooding that PICU room. I had a strength that I didn't know was in there until I needed it. Right. And the same with these 2 years since. 5 years ago, I was not ready to walk through grief of losing a child, or 3 years ago. But right now I am. I have what I need with the family around me, with my faith, with God's love, with his memory, to make the hard livable, and not just livable, but joyful. Like, there's joy here, even in grief. And I don't have, I can't write a book and explain how that all works, because it's something almost too big.
Right.
It's too big and too hard and too holy to like put into words, but I'm living it. Like I am here because it does happen that you can get through the hardest things that you fear, the hardest moments that you just feel like I could never survive that. You can survive it. And, God has a plan. I believe that God has a plan for each of us parents, each of us families, each of our children, that we don't get to understand all of it here. Like we just don't.
Yeah.
But I can tell you that there is sustenance for today, to get through today in grief. And yes, it's hard. We're coming up October. Not only is Down syndrome month, it's Beckett's birthday month. And then of course the holidays are super hard. And I don't want to sugarcoat that at all, but there's still joy in the holidays. There's still joy in celebrating his birthday as a family and remembering his little life with my other children. And, we celebrate his birthday as if he was here. Like we make a cake and bring out the pictures and everything. And there is beauty in that heart. It's both. I think maybe before being NICU moms or special needs parents, we see the world in such black and white. Like if this happens,
Right.
that's the result. And y'all who are NICU parents know that the world is the ampersand or the word and becomes the most important word. It is hard and it is good. It is, stressful and it is joyful. Like it is both. And what happens is as our heart expands, our ability to hold the both, that and, it grows. And that's how we get through the day. That's how we thrive post grief or post all the stress and the trauma that we all experience being special needs parents. It's the and, it's holding that and knowing that it's both, that it's key, I feel like.
Yeah. I know I asked you to share some hard things, so I first want to acknowledge, thank you, Steph, for sharing some hard and holy things that your family's been through. But I have to ask, like, best memory of Beckett, like, what's your most favorite memory of him?
So I would say that little one, that he loved food, music, and blowing kisses. And so when we talk about him around the table, it's, how much he loved bacon and pickles and peppers and like all these. He had a lot of sensory issues, but for some reason, like really salty or strong flavors he loved. So he just, his whole face would light up at food. He loved country music, like loved country music. Dierks Bentley was his favorite. So every time he had a blood draw, we would be playing Burning Man. And the nurse was like, what is going on? We're like, no, this is for Beckett. He needs his country
He loves
music.
this.
And he would just dance and clap his hands. And, there's so much joy to be experienced in someone who has that extra chromosome. It's like all those inhibitors to love and joy that most of us humans struggle with to get past, to live
Right.
to our fullest potential. Down syndrome babies are born without those inhibitors. And so there's no inhibitors to joy or to loving everyone. And you just can't help but smile. You can't help but laugh. And that was the greatest gift in the memory that we have. Is just like my other kids talk about, we never fought when Beckett was around because he was so sensitive to everyone's emotions and he just wanted everyone happy. So we were always happy. Like so many things. But those are the memories of just the clapping, the laughing, the dancing to music. He brought so much joy into this home.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think if anyone goes to your social media, they can see lots of smiling pictures of Beckett. But I think I love, Stephanie, that you talked about these. I would probably call them masks that we put on to let people know. Like when people say, "Oh, how are you doing?" and you're like, "Fine." Well,
Yeah.
I think it's when someone I saw this on social media the other day when someone was like, "How are you doing?" Really,
Yeah.
and when you add that, and I think that that's the joy of children who have Down syndrome is how are you doing? And they force you to add the really, because that's who they are. And I love that you gave us a glimpse of that while you had him. Steph, what's something, I'm thinking, so I know you said some moms receive the diagnosis, prenatally during their prenatal appointments, and then some obviously don't find out until birth. What's something that you want people to know about Down syndrome that that maybe they're unaware of? I know we talked a little bit about the joy and the inhibitors, but I know that there are a lot of myths about children who have Down syndrome. And I'm curious to know, what's the one thing that you want people to walk away from this knowing about kids who have Down syndrome?
I think a lot of us, like, we get stuck in the awkward of it. Like, we think, well, they are weak, or, some of their mental differences or muscular differences, or like we see the weakness and don't know how to react. But what we don't know until we allow ourselves to really encounter and embrace someone who has Down syndrome is their strength. So much strength in love, strength in virtue, tenacity to, go after these therapies and to learn to walk when it's a struggle for you. Like, these kids have such a strength. And, they might have the weakest hearts physically, but they have the strongest hearts emotionally, spiritually, that we will ever encounter. And so I think just like the surprise of that, like in my life and in my family, and I know our extended relatives and those who got to know our child, it's just like this surprise of like, wow, how strong, how amazing, how funny, how much we have to learn from them, how much we are blessed. Not just that, we're a blessing to them and helping them learn and grow and survive all of those things, but how much we are blessed by their strength, their character, their humor. So we're missing out if we close ourselves off to this scary and hard road of love. Like, we miss out on something so amazing, and they're a gift to the world. They really are. Their strength and what they have to offer the world is just truly incredible. So we will be blessed if we can open ourselves up, and just set that fear aside and let ourselves be loved by them. It will change us.
I'm loving that I'm seeing, even in just more media, whether it's ad campaigns or television shows, that we're starting to see depictions of not people who are acting like they have Down syndrome, but actual people who have Down syndrome, and that they are living productive, joy-filled lives, and that they have a lot to offer. And I think that that's a real. I'm thinking of the mom maybe who sees the baby, right, and wonders what's to come. And while every story is different, every outcome is different, I think the changed heart is the same. And so I think your encouragement to open up yourself to see what it is that they have to offer is a good one. So I always ask this, it's always my last question because I love getting advice from people. So if if a mom or a dad is listening to this stuff and they've just received a Down syndrome diagnosis, what would you tell them?
So when I was being discharged with Beckett, that day we took him home from the hospital, that same pediatrician who had first picked up that he had a heart difference and that he might have Down syndrome, she looked at me like, I kind of said to her, like, well, what should I do? Like, I thought she was going to give me like a checklist of like, how do I care for this baby I'm about? Like, I was more scared going home with Beckett than I was for my first baby. Like, what do I do now? And she just looked at me and she said, you love this baby. You take him home and you just love him. That is your job. And I said, okay, I can do that. And that's what we went home and did. And, whether you are 22 weeks pregnant and you are sitting a couple weeks into a diagnosis and all the things that could be and might be when your baby is born, or maybe you're in the NICU right now with that baby, thinking down the road of how life is going to look so different. If we can not borrow tomorrow's trouble and just love that baby, whether that's a baby in our womb or a baby in our arms, that's our job as the NICU mom, as the NICU parent, is to love that baby. There's help for all the rest. There is support for all the rest, but that's our job. That's the job that we are on this earth to do. And that's my advice. Like, that is the most important thing. And that will calm our nerves and teach us to relax and teach us to become a version of ourselves that's really good if we let it.
I'm not sure there's a better way to end it. So, Steph, thank you. Well, every week, I think I say the same thing, is that what a great interview. What a sacred and special conversation that I had with Stephanie. In today's 2-minute take, I've been thinking long and hard about what I really wanted y'all to take away from today. I know at the beginning, I was saying I'm really hopeful that hope is what you're going to walk away with. But I'm actually hopeful that this is what you're going to walk away with. There was something, it was actually a recurring theme in our interview. It was not planned. It was not even one of my questions. But that Stephanie was talking about that we sometimes have these fears and we look at the world today and how are we going to deal with it tomorrow? But we're forgetting about this growth, that happens from the time that maybe you're admitted to the NICU to the time that you're discharged from the NICU. You are no longer the same mom, the same husband, the same partner, because you walk in one way and you walk out completely different, because our babies have the ability to change our lives in hard ways and in good ways. And I think that today's conversation reminded me that you have a lot of growth ahead of you. You have an opportunity and a real grace to look at the hard place that you were in. Ask for help. Stephanie said that, and I'm going to reiterate it. And that you are changed by people's love. And I think that's what I really want you to walk away with today, is that this change that's going to happen is going to equip and enable you to do things that you once thought impossible, too hard. I can't do that. And you're going to look back and you're going to surprise yourself, because you're going to see how much your baby and your child has changed you. So what a good inspirational note, I think, as we dive into this really important topic of Down syndrome awareness, of letting people know what it really means to have a child with Down syndrome, the highs and the lows of that, but also the freedom to allow yourself to grow and to change, and to allow the same thing for your NICU baby. So with that, I will see y'all next time with even more great topics. But until then, take care of yourself, and I'll see you next time. Thanks, y'all, for listening to NICU Babies Parent Support. Every parent and every experience is welcome here. If you are a NICU parent and you're finding yourself in need of support, please download our app. You can find it in the Apple Store or on Google Play, Hand to Hold. And if you love today's episode, you can share it, you can subscribe, and you can most certainly review it. We would love, love, love your reviews. It's how we reach more NICU parents. Thanks, and I'll see y'all next time.